In the first chapter, I presented a brief history of U.S.-Mexican relations. I explained how the common history of these North American nations has created an ambivalent relation of admiration and distrust. This dichotomy necessarily permeates how Mexicans look at Americans, down to basic elements such as how they refer to Americans. In this chapter, I will explore the question, why do Mexicans call Americans gringos? There is no clear consensus of when the term was first coined, but its use by Mexicans can be traced to the American intervention. The two most common legends on the origin of the term are that when American soldiers were in Mexico, they wore green uniforms. So Mexicans would yell at them, "Gringo, home!" The other legend says that during the American intervention, several hundred Irish men came to fight with the U.S. A group of them, named St. Patrick's Battalion, decided to join the Mexican side in solidarity with a Catholic nation like Ireland. These soldiers would sing while marching songs like "Gringo the Roses" and "Gringo the Lilacs," and Mexicans began to call them affectionately gringos. Since that time, Ireland and Mexico have kept friendly diplomatic relations. It is hard to determine if the term gringo was first intended to be derogatory or affectionate. What we need to keep in mind is that from the second half of the 19th century and until the good neighbor policies of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Americans openly called Latin Americans derogatory names such as pig or dago in the diplomatic dispatches or even in public events. President Theodore Roosevelt was in the habit of doing so according to the memoirs of Elihu Root, his Secretary of War. For their part, Mexicans did not use gringo in any official documents. The use of the term gringo reflects the refusal to accept the possibility that citizens of the United States of America would have monopoly rights of the term American to refer to its citizens when all inhabitants of the Western Hemisphere are entitled to this term. This resentment of the United States' appropriation of the term American was especially strong after the 1848 Mexican-American War. Eventually, the use of the term gringo was also adopted by other Latin Americans to refer to U.S. citizens and is used interchangeably with the term Yankee, especially in South America. Americans themselves use the term Yankee to refer only to residents of New England states ever since the Revolutionary War. Since the beginning of the 20th century, scholars in the U.S. have pondered the question of a common history of the Americas. These American scholars were reluctant to consider the possibility that the Western Hemisphere could have a history in common because of the sharp differences between Latin America and Anglo-America. The American scholars' reluctance had its roots in prejudice and disdain for Latin Americans. Mexicans, who are also part of North America, were and still are distrustful of Americans given the way that the U.S. enforced the Monroe Doctrine and Manifest Destiny from the mid-19th century and well into the 20th century. All of Latin America shares a resentment of U.S. imperialism. Moreover, the languages and the cultural backgrounds that are at the origin of U.S. and Mexican identity turn these neighbors into the other, a distant other that shares a long common border. In summary, Mexicans have had a difficulty finding a way to refer to their northern neighbors. They are reluctant to call them Americans because of all the historical background that comes with the term. Americans include all inhabitants of the Western Hemisphere. Why then would citizens of the U.S. hold monopoly of the term? Because Mexicans are also part of North America, this begs the question, is it possible to have a common North American culture?